Okay. Lori Loughlin pleads artificial eyeballs and Bill Gates' summer reading list. Because you should really care about what Bill Gates is reading. Need to know. Oh, this is 1440 for May 22nd, 2020. Know someone who would enjoy 1440? Just forward this email. 1440. Need to know. A memorable Memorial Day. Editor's note. We typically run 3 top stories, but have focused Fridays on the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. Below is our summary of key events. Just over 2.4 million Americans made initial unemployment claims last week, bringing the total number of newly unemployed workers during the pandemic to nearly 39 million. Though historically massive, the single-week record before the crisis was 695,000 in 1982. The figure represents the 7th straight week of declining job losses. Last week's number was also revised substantially downward by 10% to 2.7 million. The total does not include self-employed and gig economy workers receiving benefits through a temporary coronavirus-related benefits program. The news comes as Americans prepare for Memorial Day weekend, the unofficial start of summer. Though all 50 states have at least partially loosened restrictions, travel is expected to be dramatically lower than normal. AAA, a travel association, said it would not release its annual travel forecast for the first time in 20 years, saying economic indicators were too uncertain. An estimated 43 million people traveled for the holiday last year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention revised guidelines yesterday after new research showed the virus is much less likely to spread via surfaces versus person-to-person contact. A study from so you don't have to wear gloves and leave those dirty gloves in the shopping carts after you're done shopping. A study from Columbia University posted this week suggested that implementing stay-at-home measures 1 week earlier in the U.S. could have prevented 36,000 of the deaths. More than half, seen through May 3rd. The study is a preprint and has not yet been peer-reviewed. See the paper here. If it hasn't been peer-reviewed, why are we talking about it? And a lot of that was because some people decided to say that President Trump was doing too much by just banning some travel. They wanted to be contrary. Meanwhile, nearly a quarter of Americans say they have little or no interest in receiving a coronavirus vaccine, according to a new poll. Some cited anxiety over the speed at which potential vaccines were being developed. Yeah, that makes sense. Others said they may reconsider if the vaccine had formal regulatory approval. Well, that's supposed to be the case anyway, but it would be better for some people to hold off until you see the whatever long-term effects there might be. President Trump traveled to Michigan yesterday, touring a Ford Motor factory outside Detroit that had been expanded to produce medical ventilators. That's not really necessary anymore. The state has seen more than 5,100 deaths from 53,500 reported cases to date, with central Michigan simultaneously grappling with major flooding after 2 dams burst earlier this week. The U.S. has reported 1.58 million cases with 94,729 deaths as of this morning. Deaths rose 1.4% since yesterday morning. See the moving 3-day average here. Total cases reported worldwide passed 5 million yesterday, with at least 330,000 deaths. We recommend checking out the Financial Times' new comprehensive interactive datasets to visualize the global pandemic. I don't really want to do that. Finally, the traditional wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia will be held, but without access to the general public. We aren't sure what the holiday will look like around the country this year, but here are the best photos from Memorial Day 2019. Well, that's probably just going to be depressing. Have more questions? Check out our expert-curated coronavirus resource page. In the know. Sports, entertainment, and culture. Lori Loughlin and her husband will plead guilty to conspiracy charges this morning in college admissions scandal. Loughlin will serve 2 months in prison. Husband will serve 5 months as part of plea deal. Because she's a woman. And women and men should be equal. University of California system to phase out SAT and ACT results as part of its admissions process beginning in 2021. Is that because of the coronavirus and they're going to go back to it, or what? The match. Champions for Charity pits Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning against Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady this Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, TNT and TBS, to raise funds for COVID-19 relief. CBS and Amazon Prime lead networks in nominations for the 47th Daytime Emmy Awards, with General Hospital leading shows for the June 26th event. Okay. Good for General Hospital. It's been around a really fucking long time, huh? Science and technology. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts above-average Atlantic hurricane season. That's NOAA. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts above-average Atlantic hurricane season. Estimates predict 3 to 6 Category 3 or higher systems. And I bet it's all because of man-made climate change. Artificial eye with nanometer-sized light sensors demonstrated. Some sensing capabilities are on par with the human eye. Some. Okay. Is that for the robots that are going to take over the world? Astronomers capture one of the first known images of the formation of a planet. Observation made near a star named AB Aurigae, roughly 520 light years away. Cool. The formation of a planet. Okay. Business and markets. U.S. to provide pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca with $1.2 billion to accelerate potential COVID-19 vaccine and secure 300 million doses for U.S. Efficacy of company's vaccine still unproven. That's a lot of money for something that's not proven yet. Facebook joins growing list of tech companies transitioning to remote work policy for certain employees. Facebook joins growing list of tech companies transitioning to remote work policy for certain employees. Workers would receive location-based compensation adjustments. Okay. Insurance comparison website select quote soars 40% on first day of trading, now valued at more than $4 billion. Politics and world affairs. Georgia police charge man who filmed Ahmaud Arbery being shot and killed with murder and false imprisonment. So stupid. The cell phone video, which leaked online May 5th, ignited national outcry over the February incident. Senate confirms Representative John Ratcliffe as Director of National Intelligence in party line 49 to 44 vote. Cool. Good for him. Senator Amy Klobuchar agrees to be formally vetted by Biden campaign as potential vice presidential pick, joining several others. Okay. China to enact new national security legislation on Hong Kong that will ban activities considered to be seditious. Move follows months of pro-democracy protests. President Trump to withdraw U.S. from the 2002 Open Skies Treaty, accusing Russia of repeated violations. I'm sure they have done that. Weekend reads. A regimen for re-entry from The New Yorker. Cities search for the safest way to return to normal. Whether the outbreak gains steam again will come down to our individual daily routines. Okay. Pizza arbitrage from The Margins. The rapidly growing food delivery industry has led to mind-bending marketing inefficiencies and mistakes, letting one restaurateur profit by letting DoorDash deliver his own pizzas back to him. Strange. An historic dumpster fire from The Ringer. ESPN's hit documentary The Last Dance details the last of 6 championships by the Michael Jordan-led Chicago Bulls team. Here's what happened the following season. Apparently it was an historic dumpster fire. Project Poltergeist from Truly Adventurous. Original interviews and archival records detail the story of Ernie Rivers, victim of the first purported haunting in a public housing development. Okay. Etc. There hasn't been an ad in this one. Did I skip over it? advertisement. Okie dokie. Etc. 10 reasons why immunity passports are a bad idea. Okay. 1 in 5 college students say they may not return in the fall. Pussies. Or they realize that there were better things to do. Entering the job market, here are the best cities to launch a new career. Oh, from our partners, there's the ad. Help communities stay disaster resilient with a master's in emergency and disaster management. 5 books Bill Gates is reading this summer. Who the fuck cares? Reopening America's restaurants by the numbers. Just do it. Just do it! Privacy laws force grandmother to delete online photos of her grandkids. Aww. A jargon-free... Well, if grandma was doing it responsibly, then there should be no reason to do that. A jargon-free look at science's craziest theory. Okay, what's science's craziest theory? The many worlds theory explained. A mind-bending, jargon-free account of the popular interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, there may be multiple copies of us living in multiple worlds. Why is that hard to understand? And they even found evidence of that recently. Quantum physics is strange. At least it is strange to us because the rules of the quantum world, which govern the way the world works at the level of atoms and subatomic particles, the behavior of light and matter, as the renowned physicist Richard Feynman put it, are not the rules that we are familiar with, the rules of what we call common sense. The quantum rules, which were mostly established by the end of the 1920s, seem to be telling us that a cat can be both alive and dead at the same time, while a particle can be in 2 places at once. But to the great distress of many physicists, let alone ordinary mortals, nobody, then or since, has been able to come up with a common-sense explanation of what is going on. More thoughtful physicists have sought solace in other ways, to be sure, namely coming up with a variety of more or less desperate remedies to explain what is going on in the quantum world. These remedies, the quanta of solace, are called interpretations. At the level of the equations, none of these interpretations is better than any other, although the interpreters and their followers will each tell you that their own favorite interpretation is the one true faith, and all those who follow other faiths are heretics. Oh my. On the other hand, none of the interpretations is worse than any of the others, mathematically speaking. Most probably, this means that we are missing something. One day, a glorious new description of the world may be discovered that makes all the same predictions as present-day quantum theory, but also makes sense. Well, at least we can hope. Meanwhile, I thought I might provide an agnostic overview of one of the more colorful of the hypotheses. What is with all this language that makes science sound like religion? Science should not be religion. Is this just being ironic? Are you being facetious? The many worlds or multiple universes theory. For overviews of the other 5 leading interpretations, I point you to my book, 6 Impossible Things. I think you'll find that all of them are crazy compared with common sense, and some are more crazy than others. But in this world, crazy does not necessarily mean wrong, and being more crazy does not necessarily mean more wrong. If you have heard of the many worlds interpretation, the chances are you think that it was invented by the American Hugh Everett in the mid-1950s. In a way, that's true. He did come up with the idea all by himself, but he was unaware that essentially the same idea had occurred to Erwin Schrödinger half a decade earlier. Everett's version is more mathematical, Schrödinger's more philosophical, but the essential point is that both of them were motivated by a wish to get rid of the idea of the collapse of the wave function, and both of them succeeded. As Schrödinger used to point out to anyone who would listen, there is nothing in the equations, including his famous wave equation, about collapse. That was something that Bohr bolted onto the theory to explain why we only see one outcome of an experiment, a dead cat or a live cat, not a mixture, a superposition of states. But because we only detect one outcome, one solution to the wave function, that need not mean that the alternative solutions do not exist. In a paper he published in 1952, Schrödinger pointed out the ridiculousness of expecting a quantum superposition to collapse just because we look at it. It was, he wrote, patently absurd that the wave function should be controlled in 2 entirely different ways, at times by the wave equation, but occasionally by direct interference of the observer, not controlled by the wave equation. Although Schrödinger himself did not apply his idea to the famous cat, it neatly resolves that puzzle. Updating his terminology, there are two parallel universes, or worlds, in one of which the cat lives, and in one of which it dies. When the box is opened in one universe, a dead cat is revealed. In the other universe, there is a live cat, but there always were two worlds that had been identical to one another until the moment when the diabolical device determined the fate of the cats. There is no collapse of the wave function. Schrödinger anticipated the reaction of his colleagues in a talk he gave in Dublin, where he was then based in 1952. After stressing that when his eponymous equation seems to describe different possibilities, they are not alternatives, but all really happen simultaneously. Erwin Schrödinger is best known for his thought experiment of a cat in a box, both alive and dead at the same time, which revealed the seemingly paradoxical nature of quantum mechanics. He said, "Nearly every result the quantum theorist pronounces is about the probability of this or that happening, with usually a great many alternatives. The idea that they may not be alternatives, but all really happen simultaneously, seems lunatic to him, just impossible. He thinks that if the laws of nature took this form for, let me say, a quarter of an hour, we should find our surroundings rapidly turning into a quagmire, or a sort of a featureless jelly or plasma, all contours becoming blurred, we ourselves probably becoming jellyfish. It is strange that he should believe this, for I understand he grants that unobserved nature does behave this way, namely according to the wave equation. The aforesaid alternatives come into play only when we make an observation, which need, of course, not be a scientific observation. Still, it would seem that, according to the quantum theorist, nature is prevented from rapid jellification only by our perceiving or observing it. It is a strange decision. Or perhaps the scientist that thinks that doesn't truly believe that unobserved nature can behave that way. In fact, nobody responded to Schrödinger's idea. It was ignored and forgotten, regarded as impossible, so Everett developed his own version of the MWI entirely independently, only for it to be almost as completely ignored. But it was Everett who introduced the idea of the universe splitting into different versions of itself when faced with quantum choices, muddying the waters for decades. Everett came up with the idea in 1955 when he was a PhD student at Princeton. In the original version of his idea, developed in a draft of his thesis, which was not published at the time, he compared the situation with an amoeba that splits into two daughter cells. If amoebas had brains, each daughter would remember an identical history up until the point of splitting, then have its own personal memories. In the familiar cat analogy, we have one universe and one cat before the diabolical device is triggered, then two universes, each with its own cat, and so on. But that's not what you said above. Above you said that there were two identical universes. Above it said that there were two identical universes that didn't differ until the diabolical device was triggered. Now you're saying that there is one universe, and then the diabolical device is triggered, which creates two universes. Everett's PhD supervisor, John Wheeler, encouraged him to develop a mathematical description of his idea for his thesis and for a paper published in the Reviews of Modern Physics in 1957, but along the way, the amoeba analogy was dropped and did not appear in print until later. But Everett did point out that since no observer would ever be aware of the existence of the other worlds, to claim that they cannot be there because we cannot see them is no more valid than claiming that the Earth cannot be orbiting around the Sun because we cannot feel the movement. Very good. Everett himself never promoted the idea of the MWI, multiple worlds interpretation. Even before he completed his PhD, he had accepted the offer of a job at the Pentagon working in the Weapons Systems Evaluation Group on the application of mathematical techniques, the innocently titled game theory, to secret Cold War problems. Some of his work was so secret that it is still classified, and essentially disappeared from the academic radar. It wasn't until the late 1960s that the idea gained some momentum when it was taken up and enthusiastically promoted by Bryce DeWitt of the University of North Carolina, who wrote, "Every quantum transition taking place in every star, in every galaxy, in every remote corner of the universe is splitting our local world on Earth into myriad copies of itself." This became too much for Wheeler, who backtracked from his original endorsement of the MWI, and in the 1970s said, "I reluctantly had to give up my support of that point of view in the end, because I am afraid it carries too great a load of metaphysical baggage. Ironically, just at that moment, the idea was being revived and transformed through applications in cosmology and quantum computing. Oh. I should probably stop here. Mayor of Peru town hides in coffin to avoid arrest after breaking coronavirus curfew. Oh my goodness. Ugh, that poor guy. So did he successfully avoid arrest, or do we know about it because he did not successfully avoid arrest? Clickbait. NASA probably did not discover a parallel universe where time runs backward. Probably. Oh, that's what I was referencing before when I said that they had actually found evidence of that. Okay, but the probably, I'm gonna believe that they did. History book. Rest in peace, First Lady of the U.S., Martha Washington, 1802. The Associated Press is founded, 1846. Rest in peace, poet Langston Hughes, 1967. Happy birthday, supermodel Naomi Campbell, 1970. Manchester Arena bombing kills 22 following Ariana Grande concert, 2017. You made it. Have a great holiday weekend. We'll be back Tuesday. I have discovered in life that there are ways of getting almost anywhere you want to go, if you really want to go. Langston Hughes. Why 1440? The printing press was invented in the year 1440, spreading knowledge to the masses. Guess what else? There are 1,440 minutes in a day. Spend your first 5 with us and never miss out on the conversation. It always takes more than 5 minutes to read this. Drop us a line and let us know how we're doing at hello@join1440.com. Interested in advertising to smart readers like you? Apply here. The end.